So, bonjour and welcome everyone to our inaugural ESG Sustainable Finance Conference. From policy concerns to transformative tools. Bienvenue à vous toutes et tous à notre première conférence d'automne sur la finance durable et les facteurs ESG, des enjeux politiques aux outils transformateurs. So as is customary, these such events, I would like to just acknowledge the land that we are currently on. So McGill University is on land, which long served as a site of meeting and exchange amongst Indigenous peoples, including the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe nations. We acknowledge and thank diverse Indigenous people whose footsteps have marked this territory in which we now live and work, if I can add, meet and gather, and learn and share. So I'm just happy to announce that true to the sustainability theme, this event has been certified at the highest level, Platinum, that McGill University provides to events. So there's a program at McGill that any events that happen on campus go through a certification process if you choose to do so, and we are all encouraged to do that. And so based on very specific sustainability criteria, such as the food we serve, how much paper is printed, do we have compost bins, which we do in the back over there, carbon offset purchases, etc., you can get a certain level. So Platinum is the highest level, and I think we reached 100% score, perfect score, maybe even more than 100%. So I think it's a great accomplishment, and thank you to the Ashley and Shivani and the organizing team for achieving this. It's great. So just a bit about the Sustainable Growth Initiative, which is overseeing this event and also oversees the CIBC Office of Sustainable Finance. So it's a McGill-wide initiative, but anchored at Desautels Faculty of Management. And it's what we call a cross-faculty venture, a multidisciplinary venture that mobilizes various stakeholders, academics, policymakers, industry leaders to build actionable proof-of-concept solutions to allow businesses to transition to more sustainable business models and address and take on the various sustainability challenges. So our vision is essentially to be a global hub, both of knowledge creation, but also dissemination. So, whatever insights we gather through our initiatives, our research projects, student competitions, we want to share that. We want to broadcast that very publicly, very openly to businesses and anyone else, policymakers, NGOs, nonprofits, non-exclusive way. It's really open, and we just want to share, and that's the whole philosophy behind the SGI. And with the mission of leveraging and utilizing and mobilizing the great resources we have at McGill, the talented students, our researchers, our staff, to help businesses transition and pivot to more sustainable business models. So just a bit about the team. So the SGI, the Sustainable Growth Initiative, is led by Javad Nasiri, who's a professor of operations management at Desautels Faculty of Management. He's a Benson faculty scholar, and he has a various research expertise, as you can see, in supply chain operations and sustainability, such as agri-food and apparel industry. The administrative team is led by myself, the associate director, and Ashley Jian, who's the program administrator. Ashley is over there in the back, taking care of, making sure everything's running well. So just a bit about the structure and framework of the SGI. We focus our activities on 5 key pillars, and one of them is research to action. So I mentioned that before. It's actionable research. It's academic, but it also is applied in a very pragmatic approach to our research projects. So the solutions that come out of the research projects are applicable and implementable, we hope, with business and with the various industrial sectors that we work with. Engagement. So we would like to organize community workshops. Thanks. Community workshops and roundtables and conferences such as this one, which have the goal of presenting things but also fostering dialogue. So that's one thing we would hope to see today, is really an engaged discussion through the Q&A, through the panel, to really hear from you. We have experts in the audience, we have experts on the panel, So we hope to have these really healthy and lively discussions and brainstorm on some of the key challenges that we're tackling today, and let's see if we could come up with some solutions. And one of the goals of these types of events, such as these conferences, is if we can, even through our networking sessions, point out a few topics that we want to delve into further through research or through student competitions. Let's talk and let's engage and let's collaborate together. We hope to achieve that because in our view, the SGI's philosophy with this multi-stakeholder approach is we have to break all the silos. And so the academics can't do their own thing, and industry leaders need help on our side with our expertise as well. So let's all work together. And of course, we need to bring policymakers in as well in order to implement some of the recommendations that we hope to make. And I mentioned student competitions. So we have a few going on throughout the year. We just finished one called the McGill International Portfolio Challenge, which is a global competition focused on a very real-world problem called inflation resiliency, which you probably all know and feel every day. And so these are type of competitions where we like to mobilize and focus the global student talent, and also not just McGill students, but around the world, to really challenge them and make them think about how to approach certain challenges, because they will be hopefully the next sustainability leaders. Thought leadership, as I mentioned, whatever insights and knowledge we gain, we want to disseminate that broadly using various platforms. And so share and in a very transparent way, share our knowledge. And education. So and it's maybe on purpose mentioned at the end, is that one of our goals, once we gather all of our knowledge through our interactions with various stakeholders, is to kind of come up with training modules. They could be courses, in person, they could be online modules. We really don't know where we're going, but an ESG module that's fit for the general public, for our students, as well as business leaders. And so that's something that we are going to be seriously looking at in the coming year. And I just wanted to point out that we have started off with three main themes. There's many themes in sustainability, but we're focused on decarbonization, sustainable transport, and sustainable finance as a start. And so sustainable finance being the theme of today. So this is an example of the type of event we do to cover our priority themes. All right. So now I just want to talk a bit about sustainable finance, the topic of today. And before I introduce the person who's spearheading this whole thing, Per Johansen, I just wanted to talk a bit about the Office of Sustainable Finance. So the SGI aims to leverage the expertise and resources within McGill and across our sustainability-minded network to explore challenges faced by finance institutions in their ESG efforts. With a generous gift from CIBC, and we have one of the representatives from CIBC today, Emily Bissonnette, we were able to, through that generous support, establish the CIBC Office of Sustainable Finance, which is led by Professor Per Johansen of the Faculty of Law. And this Office of Sustainable Finance will explore the effectiveness of sustainable finance strategies and tools that allow the SGI to translate those insights from our activities into actionable solutions for the finance industry. So we would like to thank our partner, CIBC, for their immense support in creating this office. And with the generous support of CIBC and our other initial funding partners, including Power Sustainable, who will be represented today in the afternoon panel, La Caisse des Dépôts et Placements du Québec, and Alstom, we are quickly building a strategic network of collaborators who bring deep expertise and passion to the table. So one such example of the type of activity we do is today's inaugural ESG and Sustainable Finance Conference, which boasts a really great program for the day, and I hope you enjoy it. And has been designed and spearheaded by none other than Per Johansen, who I'm sure all of you know quite well or will get to know today. And so just a bit about Per. He's the Professor of Business Law at McGill University and head of the CIBC Office of Sustainable Finance. He's a private law scholar with a focus on contract law, corporate governance, and transnational regulatory theory. Since 2021, he's Professor of Business Law at McGill. Received a law degree, PhD, and a postdoctoral habilitation degree from Goethe University in Frankfurt. Member of the German Bar, and earned a licence en droit from Paris West, and an LLM from LLM from Harvard Law School. Prior to McGill, he was Professor of Law at Osgoode Hall Law School in Toronto, where he held a Canada Research Chair from 2004 to 2014. From 2014 until 2020, he held the inaugural chair in transnational law at King's College London and served as the inaugural director of the Dixon Poon Transnational Law Institute. I can go on, he has a lot of accolades and a lot of accomplishments, but maybe for the sake of time, and maybe he would like to talk a bit about that, I'll stop there, but as you can see, he's very well versed in all things law. He also founded and is co-editor-in-chief of the McGill Research Papers series in Business, Finance, Law, and Society at the Social Science Research Service. So without further ado, let us welcome Per.
Okay, thank you very much, Saul, for this kind introduction, and to all of you for coming. Okay, good. And to all of the people that have helped put this together in very little time. So I'm very grateful to all of you. Now, I somehow think after 3 years of mostly Zoom events, it's a bit odd to have in-person events again. It feels still strange to me. It's one of the first ones that I'm actually involved in. And also the sense of conferences has eluded me a little over time. But I think in terms of who we've managed to invite and come today, I think it's very unique in the sense that it's such a wide spectrum of people that have come, and the way in which both might be able to tell you in which we actually met. It's, you'll see, it's not just one of those blah blah shop talks, meetings, but I think it'll be very concrete. All right, so I think if I had only one sentence that I was allowed to say today, then I would say that this conference is aimed at facilitating a cross-industry, cross-sector conversation with the premise and ground rule, no more business as usual. There are 3 key considerations which inform today's conference. Defining ESG by breaking down the term into its components, environmental, social, and governance, is only the very first step in an exercise of actually problematizing the current moment, which suffers from a breathtaking underperformance of both public and private actors to deliver on the aspirations that these 3 elements point to. The evident failure to address the concerns of today's youth and other vulnerable populations by putting in place measures that objectively and meaningfully reduce global warming is one of the reasons for the state of restlessness we find ourselves in today. Paradoxically, however, the state and the actual daily experience of restlessness, noise, and chatter is also caused by a flurry of activities, pronouncements, declarations, and policies, codes of conduct, standards, and ratings, some of which are being elaborated with good intent. But together, this flurry of norm production has for years now contributed to the so-called alphabet soup of competing, overlapping, complementing, and oftentimes even conflicting ESG standards. This proves disheartening for seasoned policymakers, regulators, and activists alike. There's wide evidence to support that the ambiguous nature of endless climate change policy negotiations feeds into the already problematic state of public democratic attention and enthusiasm, and the lack thereof. What at times was a feeling of discontent, which could fuel concrete action, seems to have given way to a sentiment of disillusionment, frustration, and perhaps even cynicism. The elephant in the room is a nihilistic one. Why bother if nothing changes? And still, it seems paradoxical because so much apparently is going on right now. The landscape of climate change policymaking across different public and private actors, in fact, is exceedingly pluralistic and implicates a stunning variety of institutions and organizations. Organizations, governments, supranational norm creators, as well as investors, unions, and social environmental movements and activist groups. But it feels as if the conversation takes place in a context that has neither peak nor center. Everyone is talking, but to whom? And how does this action lead into transformational political change? Change that is science-driven and acts on the notion of urgency, and change that is democratically grounded. Most public law and business school professors find themselves drowning in trying to unpack, let alone teach, this complexity of law and governance, hard and soft law, policy arenas, ESG ratings as sustainability standards promulgated by domestic, transnational, and international actors. Try explaining the legal nature of Larry Fink's annual letter to shareholders with traditional categories. Are his letters merely the investment assessments delivered by a very powerful chairman of one of the 3 world's largest investment or asset management companies, illuminating the investment strategy of a major market player? Or is Larry Fink's letter a policy statement, and as such one which actually speaks in unmistakable terms about the allocation of responsibility for sustainable finance between the public and the private sector? If the latter is the case, then that tells us a lot about the place of democratic governance of green and sustainable finance. That leads us to the second consideration for this meeting today. We have to ask ourselves on whose behalf we are speaking. We need to ask whether we, with all our privileges, are doing enough not to shut the door on those on whose accounts of climate change we ought to hear in order to understand the true impact of long-coming, deeply entrenched ecological transformation. We need to learn very quickly to appreciate the importance of understanding climate change as a problem that is centuries old and deeply implicated in the evolution and progression of exploitative, extractivist, and exclusionary forms of economic policymaking. While many of us in the West only recently begin to discover and engage with the vocabularies of the Anthropocene, that is the period of time during which human activities have implicated the environment enough to constitute a distinct geological change, that has simply not been the case for many others around the world that have been starting to acknowledge that and experience it much, much earlier. We've invited a unique group of experts here today. Unique because they are so diverse and represent such a spread of industries, sectors, interest groups, and constituencies. And we're well aware of how many are still missing from this conversation across Canada and its Indigenous peoples and beyond this country and its hemisphere. Today's event is going to be incomplete in that regard and can thus only be one of a number of conversations which the Sustainable Growth Initiative and the Office of Sustainable Finance are facilitating. While members from the sector of Indigenous finance could not be here today, their absence is limited and their participation is a major influence and inspiration for the upcoming 2-day spring conference we are already preparing. Third and last in consideration. What insights can we expect from a conversation across legal, management, finance, labor, and environmental policy and litigation sectors? And what insights can be gained from looking back into the histories of CSR, corporate social responsibility, as a foil against which to engage today's flurry around ESG? Some of us will today bring up CSR, which many of the younger ones in the room have as much relation to as they have to the Cold War, in order to reiterate that this present dilemma has not come out of nowhere. But regardless of how much we will say about CSR specifically, its historical spectre follows us with the question, so where are you now after all this time? So despite the overwhelming clamor of what needs to happen now in view of tomorrow, we should take seriously the thought that history matters and must be engaged with when searching for 5 minutes to midnight, or rather 5 minutes past midnight, solutions in this climate catastrophe. History matters, and each panel will provide illustrations of it, in the sense that the institutional architecture we are battling against today rests on choices that were made in pivotal times in the past and are haunting our efforts to make changes today. But how to account for what we have done in the past and what we either failed to recognize or value differently at the time? We must ask ourselves how much promise really lies in the breathless and frantic production of yet more definitions, more standards, more certifications, and more ratings, if we don't consider a more public, democratic, inclusive, and collective endeavor to embrace the question of climate change mitigation as one about how to live together, locally and globally, before it is too late. This leads us to the dentist's probing of the bad tooth, which each panel must subject itself to today, I think. Can you, in your particular role, go beyond the franticness of the currently competing pronouncements of aspirational concepts, terms, and promises, and probe into what concretely you want to see done and what is standing in the way? With the dentist's drill in hand, we ask each actor, what are the concrete roles that you and your institution have been assuming? And can you be satisfied with the speed of progress? My mother, always said in reference to difficult moments, think of it as a dentist appointment. It will come and go. Our conversation too will later end with drinks and snacks, but let us try to do some proper drilling before. Thank you.